Okay, well, that's 1 minute in, so we'll get started from here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to ISS session IC 51. My name is Jack Freed. I'll be the moderator for this event. It's going to be showing our values, clinical practice in Aotearoa, New Zealand, presented by both Liz Turnbull and Jasmine Fox. So any questions you guys have, please put into the chat box below, and we'll make sure we keep those for the end. And I will be sure to post the ICU code at the beginning and the end, at the end of the presentation. So with that, take it away, everyone.
Oh, sorry. 1 moment. Sorry, good morning. We're just trying to sort out the screen share and we'll be good to go. There we go. Share. Cool, good morning. Can you guys, hopefully you can see that. Kia ora koutou katoa, morena, good morning from Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome to our presentation on showing our values, clinical practice in Aotearoa, New Zealand. My name is Liz Turnbull, and this is my colleague, Jasmine Fox. We're excited to share with you what it looks like to work here in Aotearoa, New Zealand in the wheelchair and setting community, as well as sharing the journey of our health and disability system that our health and disability system is on. We'll be running through a model designed to assist therapists with relationship building, clinical reasoning and decision making, and applying this to a clinical case study. Jazz and I are co-located for this session, so rather than me throwing to her virtually, you'll have to bear with us as we try and share this presentation sitting side by side. Okay, so our learning objectives for this session is that you will gain knowledge of wheelchair and setting practice in Aotearoa, New Zealand, that you'll develop an appreciation of the Māori worldview and how this complements holistic practice. And this is going to involve some lessons in history because our past always informs our current and future perspectives. We hope that you'll be able to implement a theoretical model into your practice and be able to share some information about yourself using the concept of the Māori pepeha. And this will broaden your cultural understanding applicable to all cultures who identify with land, place and ancestors. So first up, we're going to kick off by sharing our own pepeha. So here in New Zealand, a pepeha is a way to introduce yourself. It's an important structured format of introduction commonly used by Māori, who are our Indigenous people of New Zealand, who are also referred to as tangata whenua, which is a phrase that means people of the land. Pepeha is an acknowledged way of establishing whakawhanaungatanga. This is a way of introducing yourself by connections that you have to people, places, and things that are important to you. The word whakawhanaungatanga can be broken down into a lot of longer Māori words can be broken down into different meanings. So the word whakawhanaungatanga can be broken down into whaka, which is causing something to happen, whānau, which is family, whanaunga, which is relative, and whanaungatanga, whānautanga, which is relationships and shared experience. Traditionally, in your pepeha, you also acknowledge your ancestors and your family history. So who's come before you? We call this whakapapa, which means to lay one thing upon each other. So you get that sense of layering. Whakapapa is one of the most prized forms of knowledge and great efforts are made to preserve it in Māori culture. All the people in the community are expected to know who their immediate ancestors are and pass this information on to their children so that they too can develop pride and a sense of belonging through understanding the roots of their heritage. Today, a pepeha helps people to paint a picture of who you are, places that you identify with, where you and your ancestors are from. It establishes connections and reinforces relationships to those that you share it with. And learning your own pepeha can make those connections more tangible and more real, giving a sense of self and belonging. It can be used by anyone. So in our teams, we have colleagues from all around the world. And when we share our pepehas with each other, it helps us to understand each other better and to make connections. This format can also be used when we're working with clients. Today, we're going to share a simple pepeha format that's commonly used. and we'll share and show you places and people that are important to us. So hopefully you'll get a snippet of who we are and where we come from. As we continue through the presentation, the importance of places as the importance we place on connection to the land, family and history, and how that's all interconnected for Māori health is going to be evident to you. So Jazz is going to start with her pepeha and I'll follow with mine.
Cool. So ko Tāwhitarahi te maunga. So Tāwhitarahi is the mountain. Ko Pāringaringa te moana. Pāringaringa is the ocean. Ko Aotearoa te awa. Aotearoa is the river. Ko Mamari te waka. Mamari is my waka. Ko Te Pōuri te iwi. Te Pōuri is my tribe. Ko Patahi te marae. Patahi is my marae. Ko Fox toku whānau. Fox is my family. And ko Jazz toku ingoa. My name is Jazz. So now I'm going to pass on to Liz for her to share hers.
So ko Maunga Kiki te maunga. Maunga Kiki is my mountain. Ko Onehunga Bay te awa. Manukau Harbour. Manukau Harbour and Onehunga Bay is my ocean. Nor Tamaki Makaurau aho. I'm from Tamaki Makaurau, which is Auckland. Ko Turnbull toku whānau. Turnbull is my family. And ko Liz toku ingoa. My name is Liz. So I guess we wanted to cover off what our why is. So back when there was a call for abstracts for ISS, Jazz was in her second year of practice as an OT, and I was her team leader. I've since changed jobs, but this topic has remained a point of connection and interest for both of us. Jazz is a Māori practitioner, one of a limited number in New Zealand who can readily use cultural connection to engage and develop strong relationships with their clients. The vast majority of us who are wheelchair and seating professionals in New Zealand identify as Pākehā, like me, and many are recent immigrants to New Zealand. For many of us, cultural competency is an area of development and learning. This is something that Jazz and I have connected over. And your ISS theme also got Jazz and I thinking about how important the values of our workplace are as we strive to connect with our clients and deliver great outcomes, particularly to Māori. So for those of you who aren't sure where New Zealand is, we are located just below and to the right of Australia in the Pacific Ocean. We have a population of just over 5 million. And we're the first in the world to wake up every morning, and it is very early here right now on Wednesday morning. So I'm just going to talk about the service where Jazz and I worked together. So Mobility Solutions is a regional service based in Auckland, which is the largest city in New Zealand with an estimated population of 1.7 million. Mobility Solutions is a government-funded service providing individualized wheelchair and seating solutions for clients with complex postural and mobility needs of all ages and abilities within the Auckland region. Auckland is the largest urban centre in New Zealand, and our Māori population is represented by about 11% of our service users. In other regions of New Zealand, such as Northland, the top of the North Island, Māori make up about 35%, and the Bay of Plenty, which is the curve there, the big curve near Auckland, is Māori make up 25%. So it varies through the country. People with disabilities in New Zealand mainly receive assistive equipment through government-funded providers. Mobility Solutions holds clinics on site and also visit people in their homes and their workplaces and schools. Mobility Solutions is a team made up of 18 credentialed wheelchair and seating therapists who are either OTs or PTs. The population Mobility Solutions work with is numbered at around 1,500. So their clients are people of all ages and conditions, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, MS, ALS, those sorts of conditions. In this part of the country, the needs of people who have disabilities related from accidents and injury are met by other providers. To meet new Mobility Solutions service entry criteria, the person needs to fit some parameters that deem their needs complex. There are a few similar contracted specialist assistive tech providers in New Zealand. Seating to Go, where I work now, is another one. So just thinking about Māori society and structure, today Māori are still part of an iwi, which is the tribe, a group of people who are descendants of a common ancestor and associated with a certain region or area in New Zealand. Iwi can trace their entire origins and whakapapa, so that genealogy that I talked about earlier, right back to a certain waka. So a waka being the canoe that they arrived in New Zealand on. Each iwi is made up of various hapu, which is the clans or the descendant groups, the whānau groups, which can be made up of several hundred members. Each hapu is made up of whānau groups, which is our word for family. The bond that holds these elements of society together is one of connection and kinship, which is known as whanaungatanga. So as you will have heard in Jaz's pepeha, as a Māori person introducing herself in a formal way and seeking connection with a group, you do so stepping through all these layers of history and society. So Jaz referred to my waka, my iwi, my hapu, my whānau. So again, more background, I guess. So Māori arrived in New Zealand around 1300 AD on wakas, so canoes, from an island or a group of islands in Polynesia in the South Pacific. Māori were described by early Europeans as tall, muscular, fit, and healthy people who led active lifestyles. The hapu, so the extended family group, controlled a defined area of tribal territory, ideally where it had access to fisheries, forests, lakes, and rivers. Māori were expert hunters, gatherers, growers. They wove fishing nets from flax. They carved fish hooks from bone and stone. They cultivated the land and cooperated in fishing, land clearing, building, construction of waka, meeting houses, and they shared the care of their children and their elderly. Whanaungatanga was the maintenance of relationships amongst the collective, which was essential to ensuring the tribe's survival and prosperity. Māori have a strong belief in the spiritual realm, so maintaining that people walk beside their ancestors, not above or below them. Another interesting point for you guys might be that the land is known as whenua, which also has a strong spiritual meaning. So whenua in Māori means land. It also means placenta. So Māori hold a great respect for whenua as both the provider of sustenance to survive and grow. So without whenua, humans wouldn't survive. Thus, Māori do not consider themselves above the land, but consider the land an integral part of their being. They consider themselves the kaitiaki, or the guardians, who hold a role of maintaining and protecting the land. Māori are a holistic culture who embrace spirituality, physical, mental, and whānau elements. For Māori, living a good life is about maintaining balance between all these things. So when planning this presentation, we decided that it was going to be important to share some history to give you a bit of context. So this timeline depicts for you how recent our history is in New Zealand. It shows how rapidly the positive intent of the Treaty of Waitangi, which I'm going to talk about shortly, deteriorated into a period in our history that modern Māori is still recovering from. So the confiscation of land as a result of the land wars in the mid-1800s, the erosion of the Māori language, which we refer to as te reo, following the Native Schools Act in 1867, which forbid the use of te reo in schools by students, parents, and the teachers, and resulted in many young Māori and subsequent generations losing their language. The abolishment of cultural customs in relation to healing and medicine with the Tōhanga Suppression Act in 1907. And then in the 1970s, the wrongs of the past were starting to be seen and openly challenged. The Waitangi Tribunal, which was established by the government representing the Crown, so it's probably important for you guys to remember that we're still a Commonwealth nation, so we do talk about the Crown a little bit, was established and gave Māori a way to seek justice and some compensation. In the 1980s, we also saw some Māori academics developing guiding models, like a model called Te Whare Tapawhā, which Jaz is going to talk to in more depth. It's been formally recognised by the government that what has been done to date isn't enough, and the government's in the process of establishing a health authority for Māori in an effort to address the enormous inequities that we still see in relation to health and disability. Taking a bit of a step back again, so a Dutch explorer named Abel Tasman was the first European to discover and name New Zealand for a Dutch province named Zeeland. He was involved in a brief skirmish with two waka and full of pretty fearsome warriors by historic account at the top of the South Island. He mapped out some of the coastline but wasn't really brave enough to land. it was actually another 127 years before Captain James Cook arrived in 1769 on his first of 3 journeys around New Zealand, where he mapped and explored our country. So after James Cook, sealers, whalers started visiting really regularly, followed by some traders. Accounts suggest that Māori were treated quite poorly with these early encounters with European. By the 1830s, the British government was receiving pressure to address lawlessness and settle the country before the French did. So on the 6th of February 1840, New Zealand's first governor, a chap called William Hobson, assembled a number of chiefs in a beautiful spot in the north of our country called Waitangi to sign a treaty document between Māori and the Crown. So that was on the 6th of February. So we have our national, it's a national holiday. So on the 6th of February, we enjoy that in New Zealand as a national holiday. It's a day of quite significance for us. Over subsequent months, he and his office acquired the signatures of over 500 chiefs all over New Zealand. Some signed the Māori version of the document and some signed the English version. So that's where things started to go awry. Due to errors in translation and that cultural understanding of the land, which I've referred to already, so guardianship as opposed to ownership, each party understood the treaty differently. Māori considered the treaty to be a guarantee of their rights as tangata whenua, so the people of the land, whereas the British at that time saw the treaty as a surrender of Māori sovereignty to the Crown. So New Zealand's health and disability providers believe that understanding and implementing the Māori worldview into our practice is essential to successful health outcomes for all New Zealanders. The treaty has 3 core principles, so partnership, protection and participation. Of importance is that ongoing relationship between the government and iwi, that Māori are involved in shared decision-making about their health services, and that they have a leading control in their own health, that the government actively protects Māori through health promotion, preventative strategies, and actively striving to elevate Māori health, and that there's equality of opportunity and outcomes that ensure that Māori are involved in all levels of the health system. So despite many providers having great intentions, intergenerational trauma and numerous barriers to equity have had a profound impact. So working towards bettering health outcomes for Māori is a core focus of New Zealand health and disability providers. Unfortunately, the statistics clearly show how big the gap is and how much work we need to do. So just the graph that we've popped up on screen, this depicts life expectancy, and we can see the purple lines at the top represent Māori, represent Pākehā, so represent non-Māori, with women and then men. And then you can see the gaps, the lines on the graph at the bottom representing Māori men and Māori women. And in particular, you can see the awful statistics related to life expectancy of Māori in the 1950s and 60s, where on average the life expectancy was sort of the mid-50s. In 2022, the gap's still significant. So Māori men, for instance, die 8 years sooner than non-Māori men. Here are some more examples from our Ministry of Health, just from their website. So they've got it all there for you to have a look at. So top left, we've got disabled Māori. They're much more likely to have unmet need related to assistive equipment. So one of the examples given there is 35% for Māori women compared to 15% for non-Māori. The top right graph there, Māori have twice as many days in hospital for acute care. Bottom left, Māori are more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. In this area of our health, our Pacifica New Zealanders are even more impacted, so Pacific Island Kiwis. And then the purple graph bottom right depicts the cancers experienced by Māori women. So, and rates of death from cancer tell us that once diagnosed, Māori are much more likely to have a poor outcome. So our Ministry of Health describes our equity issues with the following quote. So people have difference in health that are not only avoidable, but they're unfair and unjust. Equity recognises different people with different levels of advantage require different approaches and resources to get equitable health outcomes. As seen in this well-known image, which I'm sure you guys have all stumbled across before, one size, one solution, or one action doesn't fit everyone. So our barriers to equity are likely to be really similar to those seen internationally for other population groups. What we have evidence though is that Māori experience longer and slower journeys through our health system. They often experience different care plans, so fewer referrals to specialists, less prescription of statins to manage high cholesterol. Women with breast cancer are often less likely to be offered reconstructive surgery following mastectomy. Women who give birth are less likely to be offered epidurals. Māori frequently experience deprivation, and things that many would see as small barriers, like paying for parking, become really huge barriers for access. Research always tells us that this stems from unconscious bias in health professionals and institutional racism within our systems. The term DNA, which we use quite widely, but I'm not sure if it's an international term or not, did not attend, is commonly and widely used in relation to Māori in the health sector. It's also a big bias many health professionals have. So should I bother booking that follow-up appointment if chances are they won't show up? Many services are trying to flip this focus to did not attract. So what is it that we did? What is it that we didn't do right that meant they didn't come? So as wheelchair and seating professionals, we're looking really closely at our practice and what we do. It's pretty confronting sometimes. So some basic case reviews that we've conducted suggest that Māori clients often receive fewer visits, less options are made available for trial or are trialled, and there are longer periods between episodes of care. The first step towards doing better is being aware of the problem, and equity awareness and learning to recognise examples of our own unconscious bias is a big part of our learning and development programs. So in 2017, the government commissioned an in-depth report to consider our current state and look aspirationally at how we could change the current situation for Māori health and wellbeing. The authors recommended the following: so greater Māori representation in decision-making, greater recognition and promotion of Māori leaders, including within influential decision-making positions, greater flexibility in governance, policy and service delivery arrangements, allowing more autonomy and ability to move at pace. Better and more regular reporting of trend data showing progress towards reducing differences in health equity, and tailoring and holistic models of health and wellness that work for Māori. So we're starting to see some of this in action with more services delivered by Māori for Māori with a positive impact. So an example for that would be our COVID vaccine rollout here in New Zealand. Initially a one-size-fits-all approach that was then switched up to a community-specific and community-led program that has seen our very low Māori vaccination rates improve quite significantly over recent months. So just a quick check-in regarding cultural competence. So being culturally competent means that we as professionals have attitudes, skills and knowledge that we need to be aware of cultural diversity and working effectively and respectfully with people of different cultural backgrounds. Researchers in New Zealand have described cultural competence as meaning that we have to understand the assumptions we're making about the situation we're seeing, our own beliefs and biases and what might be making us feel uncomfortable, and how to be open to what is really going on for the person we're working with, not making assumptions. What cultural competence isn't is treating everyone the same, because we know we're all not. There isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And operating with a checklist mindset. So I guess that lacks some depth. So if you have your checklist, when I'm working with a client of this ethnic background, I do X, Y, and Z. I think that lacks a bit of depth. Cultural competence is a bit more than that. I'm now going to pass over to Jazz.
Cool. So as an organisation, Auckland District Health Board, or ADHB if I shorten it, in consultation with more than 2,500 patients, whānau and staff identified 4 values, and these are linked to ADHB's responsiveness to Māori and all people accessing services and care. So the first one is welcome, or haere mai. We see you, we welcome you as a person. The next one is respect. Manaaki, we respect, nurture and care for each other. The next one is together, or tūhono. We're a high performing team, colleagues, patients and family. And then aim high, ngā mua, we aspire to excellence and the safest care. So for Auckland DHB, these guide our decisions in how they're made and how we strive to behave, how we recruit and develop staff, and how we measure our clients' experiences. Then as a service for mobility solution, ADHB's wheelchair and seating provider, we came together to identify what these values look like every day in our practice and how we work together and how we work with our clients. And these values authentically define how the team, 1, operates, 2, behave, and 3, interact on a day-to-day basis. So kind of moving into 2022, we're on the precipice of a lot of change. So the New Zealand government is currently engaging in significant transformational change, such as the development of a new Ministry for Disabled People and the national reform of the current Ministry of Health, including the establishment of the Māori Health Authority. The overarching goals of our health reform changes are shifting into a system that is people-centered, cohesive, accessible, and equitable. One of our biggest challenges at present is 22 separate autonomous health boards are reporting into central government, remembering that our whole country population is just over 5 million, and geographically New Zealand is comparable to the size of Colorado. So we thought we'd show you kind of what Māori health looks like today here in New Zealand and some models that might work for you. So various models have been developed to support healthcare providers to understand and consider the holistic needs of Māori. In a traditional Māori view, the inclusion of the person's wairua or spirit, the role of whānau and family, and the balance of hinengaro, such as the mind, are as important as tinana, so the physical person. The model Te Whare Tapa Whā, which was developed by Professor Sir Mason Jury, identifies this. It acknowledges that these 4 key elements are required attention to achieve Māori ora or optimal health. Te Whare Tapa Whā likens the well-being of a person to the 4 walls of a house. The word whare means house, tapa is wall, and whā is 4. In Whakaaro Māori, if one of the 4 elements are lacking or unhealthy, then this will impact on the individuals and their whānau or family. As each element is intertwined and interlinks with one another, if one of these is out, then this will have a negative impact on the remaining elements. If you compare the well-being to the 4 walls of a house, if one of the walls are missing or damaged, then the house will not be strong and prone to collapse. So this is the same ideology of a person. So to break it down a little bit more for you, so wairua explores one's spiritual awareness. As well as being physically healthy, we need to be spiritually healthy as well. This element tends to be less understood by Western society, as it can be misinterpreted as one's spirituality of a type of religion or mental health. However, wairua is about a person's understanding and accepting who they are, what they believe in, and being proud of oneself. For Māori, the wairua or spiritual well-being is not only key to one's identity, but provides the link with one's family, thus connecting the individual with a larger community that provides sustenance, support, and safety. A traditional Māori analysis of a physical manifestation of illness will focus on the wairua or spirit to determine whether damage here could be a contributing factor, as health can be related to the unseen and unspoken energies. Te taha tinana is about the person's physical well-being. It is usually the main element which Western society is concerned about. However, for Māori, this is only one element of a person's well-being. Being physically healthy is important as your body is the engine which keeps you alive and active. And it cannot be separated from the mind, the spirit, or a person's family. Te taha hinengaro focuses on one's mental well-being, and this is concerned with the person's self-confidence, how they connect with others and their surroundings. The person's thoughts and feelings and emotions are integral components of the body and the soul. And lastly, which is probably quite different from other models, is that whānau or family is the importance of family in a person's life. Whānau provide us with the strength to be who we are, and this is the link to our ancestors, our ties with the past, the present, and the future. Whānau can just mean more than your relatives though. It can include anyone who is important to you. Having a positive, healthy, and supportive environment gives a person positive energy, and you're more likely to achieve your goals. Understanding the importance of whānau and how family can contribute to illness and assist in curing illnesses is fundamental to understanding Māori health issues. As we spoke earlier about Māori culture and the ways of how iwi and hapu, so the tribes and sub-tribes, worked, independence might not be the optimal outcome for the client, but interdependence. So using Te Whare Tapawhā as a foundation, we've developed an expansion of this model that can be utilised within wheelchairs and seating and will hopefully enhance culturally safe practice. Wheelchair and seating practitioners can be guided through their journey and experience with their clients as they work towards a wheelchair and seating solution. The therapist brings their experiences, values, beliefs, and biases to the clinical relationship. They walk the path to the client's home. Relationship and establishment of connection and a common understanding is important to establish whakapanaungatanga, so establishing connections with someone. Once connection is established, the therapist can look to develop a deeper understanding of the person. The whole person is represented by the house, which is supported by the 4 walls of well-being, family, spiritual, physical, and mental from Te Whare Tapawhā. And the client's lived experience underpins these walls. After having developed an understanding of the whole person, the therapist can work with the client to explore their function and needs, their goals and aspirations, and work with the client to identify a solution that fits within system and process parameters. It guides the therapist to recognise that there may be needs outside the usual wheelchair and seating focus, but it will ultimately impact on the outcomes nonetheless. It is a practical model that will walk you through as you work in partnership and collaboration with the client. It aims to help you, the practitioner, build a holistic view and understanding of the client, taking in key considerations and elements from both a Western and Māori or Indigenous perspective of health that are influencing the client, which you can use to guide your practice with them and hopefully aim to have a successful wheelchair and seating outcome. This is timed, yes. So in the picture, there's you, the therapist, that is at the entrance of the client's property. As you walk the path to the client's home, you take in consideration the client's past. So not just the clinical and medical history, but the journey that has brought them here to the present day. This includes the client's interactions with the health system, their culture, values, and identity. The land or whenua is, no, don't worry about that. So anyway, at this stage, the therapist identifies their own biases, experience, values, and beliefs that they bring with them. It is important to identify this as it could impact your interactions, relationship building, and outcomes with the clients. The therapist then walks to the part of the client's home or whare, and the relationship and establishment of connection is a common understanding at this stage. A pepeha, which me and Liz shared earlier, is a way that you can use to establish whakapanaungatanga or create a connection. It is a way, as we mentioned before, of introducing yourself, to share with them the people and places that are important to you. Sharing your pepeha or a part of yourself with the client can build rapport and trust with them, and is an important foundation of a therapeutic relationship. Once in the client's home, you're now in their present day. Encapsulating the home is Te Whare Tapawhā, which provides the 4 walls of the house, which are the pillar to achieving Māori order, health and well-being. And enclosed with the home are the 3 elements that you use to guide your clinical practice. Clinical reasoning. So the client's function and needs, goals and aspirations, and systems and processes. So taking all of these different elements, you work together with your client to achieve an outcome that will address their current and future needs. And this leads us into the final part of the model. So when you leave the client's home, what do you hope the intervention you provide them with will do for their future? Why than just providing just a wheelchair? This links into the client's goals and Te Whare Tapawhā, but also how your intervention might provide them with education on accessing the health system, an increase in trust with health professionals in the service, or their aspirational and long-term goals. So to show you how this could look, we've put into action, we've put together a case study on a guy called Stan, who was a client that I recently worked with, to walk you through how this could work in wheelchair and seating practice. So Stan's past lived experience include the following. So as a 12-year-old Māori male who has Duchenne muscular dystrophy, he has been using a standard power wheelchair and seating for the last few years for mobility at home, school, and the community. Stan's primary caregiver is his elderly nana who lives at home with him and his extended family. Stan and his family actively engage with their iwi and local marae, which is kind of where Māori people gather together. His family work in kaupapa Māori education services, and the other kids attend Māori immersion schools. Historically, Stan and his family have had low levels of engagement with health providers, multiple DNAs, so did not attend, with mobility solutions and other health providers, and this has been made noted in this file. We know that Stanley and his family have had negative experiences within the health system and from health providers, hence the did not attend are one aspect as to why they aren't engaging. but also they felt they've not been heard and understood and their concerns not listened to. And this is also an aspect of intergenerational trauma. So myself, therapist, the experiences that I bring is 3 years practice as an OT and as a wheelchair and seating therapist. I worked previously as a youth worker working with primary school kids and also currently studying multicultural at university. The values that I bring is the whānau or the family, education and health. And then the beliefs that I'm going to be bringing with me based on what I know about Stanley so far is that I feel I have a lot to offer to a young person like Stanley. I'm hoping that the funding should be straightforward and I want to understand why they don't like accessing the health services. My biases as well, my time is precious. As we know, health professionals, we are under the pump and we've always got some more work to do. And I also want to know why aren't they engaging? So taking in Stan's past lived experience, in particular the negative experiences and disengagement with the health providers, I had to work out an alternative way of communicating with Stan and his family. The easy option was to catch Stan at school and primarily work with the school therapists and staff to try and involve the family as and when I could from there, with notes passed on from the staff and Stan in the attempts to call the family to update on the progress and trial. Instead, I decided to contact the family and work out that phoning was an ineffective way as there was always no answer. So instead I texted the nana and got a response and we booked a time and date with Stan and his nan. As most of you know, our initial assessments can be lengthy as we cover a lot of ground: personal cares, physical assessment of range of motion and posture, activities of daily living, social situation and supports, status of current equipment in place and other services involved. This can be confronting and uncomfortable for clients and at times overwhelming with the amount of questions we are asking them. Our initial assessment at Mobility Solutions can take us up to 1 to 2 hours. At the initial assessment, I introduced myself to Stan and his nana, and we shared a bit of myself with them, my pepeha and where my whānau are from, and Stan's nan did the same, and Stanley chipped in a bit here and there. He was a bit apprehensive and seemed unsure. So I decided not to chat about the wheelchair or the assessment for about the first 30 to 40 minutes. Instead, we talked about things 12-year-olds like, such as our pets, Marvel and gaming. As we continued to chat, Stan opened up and relaxed, and this segued into me being able to ask about how school was going and how he's finding his current wheelchair and seating. So our initial assessment, we actually split into 2 parts due to the length of time I spent to build rapport and connect with Stan and his nana. So the first part was we kind of talked initially about what was happening and currently in Stan's world, and it highlighted some areas of concern from Stan's nana and the questions she had about other supports and services that could be put in place as she was unwell and not managing his cares. And the second appointment was when we came back and completed the physical and postural assessment. One of the key pieces of information that came out with taking the time to spend with Stan and his nana initially was that Stan's whānau isn't your typical nuclear family. So he lived at home with his nana, who was his primary caregiver, and his extended family, but that her health is declining. And it was evident that Stan and his nana have a special and unique bond. For example, his nana moved downstairs with Stanley so that she could be closer to him, that he didn't feel alone at night. Due to his nana's health decline, this has been a reason as to why there have been multiple DNAs or did not attend, as she is a primary contact, but was unable to manage the cares and balance of multiple providers that are and wanting to be involved. After the initial assessment contact and follow-up visit, Stan and his nana said that it would be best to change to talking to his auntie to be the point of contact. So phone calls were made between myself and the auntie. And throughout the majority of the intervention, I didn't meet till the very final trial setup. But the rapport and trust that was developed with Stan and his nana flowed through to his auntie, who felt confident and trusted that I would follow up with her post-appointments and that Stanley and his nana was safe, heard and listened to when I was present. So now that we have established whanaungatanga with his Stanley, we are able to build a greater picture of what is happening with him in his present day, using both a Western and Māori worldview to help guide our clinical reasoning. So currently in Stan's present day, we identified at the initial assessment that under function and needs, his condition is deteriorated and he is unable to mobilize independently without a wheelchair, power wheelchair. He is unable to reposition himself, and he has a high risk of developing a pressure injury. He has recently recovered from a grade 2 on his sacrum, and that he requires a high level of supportive seating to support his posture, increase his comfort, and provide pressure relieving qualities. Under goals and aspirations that we use the home to help prioritise. With Stan and his nana, we decided that the goals that were set was that Stan is able to use our urinal bottle independently for toileting, and currently his wheelchair does not allow him to. It only has tilt as a power function. That Stan is able to attend all his classes. Currently he was missing class due to how uncomfortable he was in the seating and unable to reposition himself. So he had to leave class, drive and find the skilled therapist, who then had to find a support member to help to assist to reposition him in his chair. And this was happening about 4 times a day, and he would miss a significant chunk out of class. Another important goal is that his nana is still able to care for me, and that he's able to feed himself and sit at the table with his family. He is able to reach things, stand up when my friends are, and reposition myself without needing to seek help all the time. Under systems and processes, here in New Zealand, we have certain criteria outlined by the Ministry of Health that guides therapists for what the client is eligible for. The Ministry of Health provides funding support for equipment for people with disabilities who are eligible to receive such services. The support is part of the Ministry of Health's equipment and modification services, which also includes funding for housing mods, vehicle purchases, and vehicle modifications. This is reviewed by an advisor who is working on behalf of the government to manage the funding budget. So Stanley met criteria for funding under the following: wheeled mobility, gets around the home, remain or return to their home; standing/active reach, minimize physical discomfort and deterioration of the posture during growing years; and as well under the same criteria, maximize functional abilities and optimize independence, reducing care burden. So the proposed solution and report is reviewed by the advisor, who then has to approve and support the trial of the wheelchair and seating equipment outlined in the report by the therapist. Other processes that we have to follow is that we have to trial the most cost-effective equipment solution in first instance, as well as the availability of wheelchair and seating products options to trial here in New Zealand. So the other way that we break it down is using Te Whai Tapa, using a multi-perspective, and we begin to identify some underlying issues that have an impact on Stan's wellbeing, and which will also have an impact on the success of the wheelchair and seating solution. So we know Stanley was experiencing high levels of anxiety and low mood due to how much time he was missing out on class, as well that he is aware that his nana is not well and struggling to care for him, causing stress as he isn't sure what is going to happen, as well as the change in his mobility and the need for greater care support, in particular with his toileting. This is causing him embarrassment or whakamai. Stan is also frustrated that he wants to be able to attend class and stay in his chair for as long as possible, but due to pain and discomfort, he is missing out on class. And he was so uncomfortable that he needed to get into bed when he got home and could not hang out with his friends. Spiritually, Stan is well. He has strong ties and connections with his iwi and local marae, and he is grounded in his culture and heritage thanks to his family and the support they give him. He knows where he comes from and is comfortable with his own identity. Physically, we know Stan has Duchenne's and his condition will continue to deteriorate over time, and he can no longer use a standing frame and requires high level of supportive equipment to assist with the stand, and also that he is just uncomfortable in the seating, in particular back pain, and is unable to reposition himself in his seating. And with his family, we know that his nana, who is his primary caregiver, is unwell. There's an increase in care stress, and that he is currently living in a complex social situation. So putting all the information together, this helped shape the intervention in the wheelchair and seating outcome that was provided to Stan. So in the final wheelchair and seating solution, he was given a multifunction power wheelchair with tilt, power elevating leg rest, seat elevate, and active reach. This enables Stan to toilet independently with a bottle at home and school, reducing the need for carer support for toileting. The seating that was prescribed was modular off-the-shelf back support with laterals and a custom carved cushion. Off-the-shelf cushions were trialed, but none were comfortable for Stan for a prolonged period of time. So we ended up going with a custom carved cushion, as it allowed us to modify the contours repeatedly until we got the balance we needed to have Stan both supported and comfortable in both sitting and standing. Other interventions that we put into place that helped lead to the success of the wheelchair and seating was that a manual wheelchair was provided to his nana for her use as her mobility was deteriorating. A support letter was put for a new mobility van as the old and broken, which was now funded through charitable funds. A program was put in place with Stan, his whānau and family, school staff and school therapists to maximise the use of the dynamic seat functions. We also collaborated with the community OT, resulting in provision of a ceiling hoist in his bedroom. And we increased the funding for carer support, so his uncle is now the paid primary caregiver. And referrals were made to support put in place for Stan to engage with other health providers such as orthotics. So post-intervention outcomes using Te Whare Tapa Whā, you begin to paint a picture of what this has done for him. So after the provision of his wheelchair and seating, we saw a reduce in anxiety and an increase in mood and engagement as he was able to spend time with his friends and also to attend his class. Spiritually, that stayed roughly the same, though due to the reduced anxiety and concerns with his nana, he felt a lot more safer and a lot more relaxed. Physically, he still has Duchenne's and that won't change, but we saw reduced fatigue levels and him able to manage his pain independently and manage his positions change through the use of dynamic power seat functions. We also saw an increase in postural alignment and accommodation of non-reducible asymmetries. Under the family, we saw a significant reduce in carer stress and that his nana continued to support Stan, but in a different capacity. He continued to be able to live at home with the extended family, and now his uncle is his funded primary caregiver. So taking in consideration all different elements when working with your client to achieve an outcome, they'll address their current and future needs. This leads us to the final part of the model. So when you leave the home, what do you hope the intervention will provide them with in the future? Why than just their wheelchair? So in Stan's future, we are aware his condition will continue to decline, which is a factor out of all our controls. But the supports in place currently will help him and his family to continue to be well and for Stan to live his best life. Stan is planning to attend high school full time in the coming year. So with his new power wheelchair, he no longer has to miss out on class time or learning opportunities due to pain or discomfort, that he has the ability to reposition himself independently. He hopes to be able to attend university to further his studies in the future. The wheelchair and seating solution provided will continue to meet Stan and his family's need as condition changes. It has multiple functions to help him with positioning and modular components, and it should meet Stan's needs for the next few years and enable him to position himself for different activities such as gaming, toileting, transfers as he changes. And lastly, the rapport and trust that was built with Stan and his family fed through to us by connecting them into other services such as community OT and orthotics, which previously they weren't on their books or there was no or low level engagement with the services. And the success and support that was seen for Stan has hopefully built the trust with house providers again, in particular with engaging with mobility solutions.
Cool. So just in closing, wheelchair and seating practitioners strive for the best outcomes and holistic client-centered care with the very best of intentions. So we believe that conscious consideration of the holistic needs of a client's needs and our connection with them are really pivotal in getting this right. The values and beliefs that underpin us as clinicians and how we work can influence our practice. Efforts being made to improve Māori health outcomes and engage Māori in design and delivery of healthcare systems in New Zealand have international relevance. Understanding and practicing with sound cultural competence is really important. So for this to be a success, critical consciousness is key. To achieve critical consciousness, clinicians and organisations need to really engage in self-reflection and strive for self-awareness to reduce their biases and increase meaningful connection with our clients. Effective leadership, sound knowledge and strong commitment to practicing in a transparent values-based way will support clinicians to address the needs of their clients and their care. We believe that the expansion of Te Whare Tapa Whā model that Jez has presented has wider applicability to than just our context in New Zealand.
So we have a whakatauki, which is a proverbial saying in Māori culture that we feel sums up our presentation. It talks to the importance of human connection and relationships. This is what creates community and enables people to flourish. It values the human being in all of us and reminds us of what is most important. Not money, not success or a job or a thing, it is the people. He aha te mea nui o te ao. He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. What is the most important thing in this world? It is people, it is people, it is people. That's us. So if you have questions, feel free to ask about anything. If not, thank you for coming. Cool.
That was great, guys. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Jasmine and Liz? I actually do, if you don't mind me asking one. This was a really, really great presentation, like very great to see how equitable and like holistic your like model of care is. Do you guys know a lot about the quality of the products you have, like for wheelchairs and whatnot? And also kind of like any sort of like rate of failure or anything like that, and how you guys handle breakdown of technology?
The quality, sorry, the quality of the projects, the quality of product and what, sorry?
In just like wheelchairs, like other assistive technology you guys have, like, can you kind of speak on like the current quality of products and like if you guys are tracking breakdowns, things like that? It's kind of part of like the research I do here, and I was just interested.
So we have in New Zealand, we have access to all the same products that you guys do, like it's pretty identical. So our key players, so the chair that Stan went into was a Permaville chair, for example. So it's all similar stuff. And we've got from a seating point of view, again, we have all of the international, the key players, the key suppliers, but something that we're really good at is the custom carved seating. So we've got some really great fabricators who, some really great fabricators who build bespoke solutions for us. So we love custom carved rather than using technology necessarily. So it's it's that real hands-on stuff.
Great, thank you. Getting a lot of good praise in here, as you should. That was very, very informative. Any other questions? If you do, your mics are muted, so if you have any questions, oh, never mind, they are not. You can talk freely if you'd like to ask them anything directly.
So how frequently do you follow up, and is transport difficult? Follow-ups, usually, so we'll do an initial and then there's a bit of a gap in terms of like building our reports and quotes and getting all that together, and then we send it off and then it gets approved. This is in summary, and then we get to trial. So there's usually an initial trial setup, which is quite big. And then following that, there's usually subsequent. So with Stan, I don't know how many follow-ups I've done. I've done quite a few follow-ups, but usually would average around about 4, I think, post-trial. And then it depends as well. The complexity with Stan is that we decided to do a custom carved cushion, and that was actually quite pivotal to get his comfort, because I'd go bring like an off the shelf and he'd go, it's great. Then I'd get a call 2 hours later, it's not working. Can we try something else? So that took up quite a lot of time. So the guys who I used to build the custom carved cushion, they've worked with quite a few Duchenne kids before. So we're able to modify it as it met his needs and able to try it in different positions. And that really gave us the flexibility to get it right for Stanley. And is transport difficult? Yes, I guess.
So we, for a family like Stan, we, as just mentioned, he was a captive audience when he was at school. So we saw him at school predominantly, and we do visit people at home, in their home. So we travel to them more often than not. So probably only about 20% of our work's clinic based. So predominantly we are visiting people in their homes. With regards to transport, yeah, we have to get pretty creative sometimes. So getting people into clinic can be a bit of a job, and there we have to seek funding for taxi transport, so mobility taxi transport. We also have a van that our department has acquired, and for those families who are really difficult to engage with, we actually go pick them up as a reliable kind of means of getting them to clinic. We are the taxi, so we'll go and pick them up and bring them into clinic. And with regards to follow-up, so just following on from that, I guess as part of our, as mentioned, we've got 1,500 service users, and those people are lifelong service users. So we do have a follow-up system in that children are reviewed every year and adults are reviewed every 2 years. So that review is initially a phone contact to check in and see how things are going. And then if needs are identified, they either get funneled through they end up on a wait list and then they're assessed by a therapist, or we can bring them into clinic for a review where we can tweak their current existing equipment. And that's a really good way to keep in touch with kids like Stan. I think that problem that we had with him is often at that point of review, people can be really hard to reach. So how many times do you try to engage with someone? So that's something that we're mindful of as a team. It's probably persevering quite hard, particularly with families like Stan's, where we know that it's going to make a difference, but there is sometimes there's these barriers that we need to work out, identify, and then work through. Yeah.
Sometimes it just comes to us rocking up.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we can't find them, we hunt them down one way or the other.
Yeah. And sometimes people, just turn up some days, and you've just got to make it work on the day. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting you guys brought up, and I honestly wouldn't really know. Someone in the just in the video might have an idea, but you guys talked about how you guys actually keep track of how many appointments they've missed, like a rate of missed appointments.
Yeah.
Can anyone say, like, in the US, if that's like tracked very steadily in healthcare?
I think certainly in New Zealand, what do you guys use the term DNA? Did not attend, is that a term that you use?
I think, like, I've seen it listed sometimes in studies, but it's very like purposeful. Like, I don't know how like well tracked it is,
So DNA rates is whether it's valid or not really is questionable, but it is deemed a measure for engagement. So if you've got someone who repeatedly doesn't attend appointments, then those people are kind of certainly some of our service users. So someone like Stan, who is a kid with Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, who is actually there's going to be some significant deterioration in his presentation and his well-being if he doesn't attend appointments, then they do get funneled into kind of systems where there's more contact and more awareness, I guess, of whether or not they're coming to appointments, especially as a child. So he's under the age of 16. So he fits in with our pediatric services where they're pretty on to keeping track of their kids. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's fascinating. Anything else for Jasmine and Liz? Okay, well, thank you guys again. That was seriously a great presentation. We really appreciate you guys, especially giving it so early over there. So
it's 6:30 now, so time for coffee.
Yeah, time to start your day, right?
Yeah.
Okay, with that, I have the CEU code. It is XEVZ2C. XEVZ2C, and I'll post it right now. Okay, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you, Jack.
See you.
Thanks.
Bye.